shared directly by people who actually lived through these events on another podcast.
Right.
And our goal isn't to just kind of like recount these events, but to like really try to understand their impact and what these personal stories reveal about the nature of safety in our schools, right?
Absolutely. I think that's key.
Yeah.
It's one thing to sort of speculate about these things, but to hear it from people who are actually there, it really brings it home.
Yeah. So let's get straight to the first one. The screaming man in the hallway.
Okay, so this first account really struck me with how normal it all starts out.
Right.
It's just a typical Friday, 7th period calculus is almost over, spring break is around the corner.
Yeah.
Even the teacher is relaxed, filling the last few minutes with like a Sporkle quiz.
Yeah. Wow. And this really paints a picture of routine, of the everyday, right? And then that normalcy is totally shattered by the lockdown announcement.
Yeah.
And it's so unsettling because it shows how fragile that sense of safety is in these routine environments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that moment that maybe we've all considered,
Right.
Where it just goes from the mundane to like sheer panic.
Exactly.
The dean's voice comes over the loudspeaker and it's like, this is not a drill lockdown now. And you can just visualize the immediate change. The teacher's face, just goes white.
Oh, God.
Lights go off. People are scrambling into a corner.
Right.
And that casual Friday calculus class is just transformed into like a scene of fear and uncertainty. So like when you look at that initial reaction, what stands out to you?
Well, it's interesting because the sensory detail that follows is what gets me.
Oh, okay.
It's not just the lockdown itself, but it's like this escalating auditory threat.
The screaming man.
Yeah.
The narrator talks about how the sound gets closer.
Yeah.
The violence of fists pounding on lockers echoing through the hallway.
Wow.
And then it narrows to their own classroom door.
Oh, gosh.
With that terrifying demand, open up.
Oh, my God.
And it's that direct aggression.
Right.
Directed at a space where these students should feel secure. That really underscores the vulnerability of the situation.
I mean, it sounds terrifying. And then the narrator mentions 2 girls start sobbing. Like, I can't even imagine that level of terror gripping these young people in what's supposed to be a safe space.
Exactly.
And then just as suddenly as it began, the banging stops.
Right.
The voice moves on, and they're just left there in the darkness.
Right.
And that silence is probably amplifying the fear,
Absolutely.
Because they don't know if the danger is truly gone.
Yeah.
Or if it's just lurking outside their door. And it makes you think about like the psychological torment of that unknown.
That uncertainty is so key here, right?
Yeah.
The immediate threat recedes, but that lack of information, it leaves this residue of unease.
Yeah.
They're literally in the dark, but also figuratively, they don't know what's happening.
Right.
And this particular story takes a really disturbing turn in the aftermath.
Oh, gosh.
It reveals this deeper vulnerability within the school itself.
Oh, no.
So later that night, a mentally unstable man is found sleeping in a storage closet.
Oh, my gosh.
Which on its own is a huge security breach.
Right.
But then it gets worse. He had a loaded .44 Magnum with him.
Are you serious?
A powerful weapon.
Yeah.
Inside the school, accessible to someone clearly in distress.
It's terrifying.
And maybe the most unsettling thing is the narrator's observation that this man was never caught.
Oh my gosh.
So you're left with this profound sense of unresolved danger and questions about the security measures in place.
That's a huge deal, right? Like this wasn't an external threat that they neutralized.
Exactly.
It was from within.
It came from inside.
Yeah, it just shows how easily danger can exist undetected in these seemingly secure places.
Right.
So for you, the listener, it's not just about being afraid in the moment.
Right.
It's realizing that vulnerabilities can exist in the system, and even when the crisis seems to have passed, those underlying risks, those unanswered questions, they can persist.
Yeah. So it really challenges like what we think of as a safe environment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to our second account. The blood writing neighbor.
Okay.
So this one takes us to another familiar school setting, middle school lunch on a rainy day.
Right.
And again, it's that juxtaposition of the ordinary. And then suddenly, this extraordinary event that's so striking.
Exactly.
And this time, it's not a voice on the intercom.
It's something much more immediate and alarming.
It is 4 loud booms.
Wow.
And the suddenness and the impact of that sound.
Right.
It would instantly trigger fear.
Oh, absolutely.
And their reaction is really telling.
Okay.
Kids screaming.
Yeah.
Security's directing everyone to the multi-purpose room.
Right.
They're told to cover the glass walls.
Oh, wow.
It suggests that they had emergency protocols in place that were enacted quickly.
Right.
At least in response to an external threat.
So what do you think that says about preparedness?
Right.
Versus, like, the unpredictable nature of different kinds of threats?
Well, it seems like they were ready for certain scenarios, maybe active shooter drills and things, but it also shows how an isolated incident outside the school can still create chaos and fear inside.
That's a good point. Yeah. And then one of the kids, Eric, just asks innocently, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
And it gives us a glimpse into that initial confusion and the need to understand what's happening.
That human need to know what's going on.
Yeah, and the initial explanation is that there's a registered sex offender barricaded across the street.
Oh, wow.
Making threats. And so it gives them, like, a reason for the danger, however unsettling that is.
Right.
But then the story takes a much darker turn.
It does.
With some prior information shared by Brandy.
Okay.
And this detail about the neighbor cutting himself and writing a threat in blood on his window on Halloween.
Oh my God.
It completely reframes the situation.
It does.
So what's so important about that prior knowledge?
Well, it was initially dismissed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Probably seen as like a prank or something, like creepy, but not really a sign of violence.
Yeah.
But now knowing about the barricaded neighbor, it becomes this really disturbing warning sign that was missed.
It makes you wonder if we're good at recognizing real danger.
Exactly. And that's so important for you, the listener, to consider.
Right.
How often do we dismiss weird behaviors?
Yeah.
How much does the context matter? Brandy's observation was unsettling at the time.
Yeah.
But it didn't really trigger alarm bells.
Right.
But now it takes on this whole new meaning.
It's scary how that happens.
Yeah, and the takeaway here isn't just about responding to threats.
Right.
But about recognizing and taking those potential warning signs seriously.
Yeah.
Even if they seem isolated or like pranks.
Absolutely.
We need better communication.
Yeah.
A culture where these observations are reported and actually assessed.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last story we're going to look at is the basement escape.
Okay.
And this one puts you, the listener, in a different position.
Oh.
Not a student this time.
Right.
But someone working in the school down in the IT basement of their old high school.
Okay.
At age 22.
Right.
So again, familiar setting, right?
Should feel safe.
Place of routine. But then it's shattered.
Yeah. The lockdown announcement is so stark.
Yeah.
Armed intruder.
Oh.
No room for misunderstanding.
Right.
And the narrator immediately turns off the lights.
Okay.
Finds a place to hide.
Yeah.
It's pure self-preservation.
Yeah.
Making himself invisible.
Right.
In the face of danger.
So what does that tell us about how we react to threats?
It speaks to our need to survive, to make ourselves less of a target when we don't know what's happening.
And then there's this moment where it seems like there's this shared experience of fear.
Okay.
Like a connection in the darkness.
Right.
The narrator hears footsteps. Then this man in a red plaid shirt comes into the office.
Oh, wow.
Whispering that he's hiding too.
Yeah.
Asking for an exit.
Right.
And for a second, it seems like they're united by this terrifying situation.
It's a reminder of how quickly things can change and how appearances can be misleading.
Yeah.
That shared vulnerability creates a false sense of camaraderie, like safety in numbers, which makes what happens next so shocking.
Right. Because the narrator gets this text.
Oh.
It says, "Dude, some guy in a red shirt shot Mr. Buckley. Do not come upstairs."
Oh my God.
And the narrator's just reading this.
Yeah.
With this guy standing right there, the one asking for help. And it turns out he's the shooter.
Oh my God.
It's just pure terror.
Yeah.
And to make it even worse, the guy saw the narrator reading the text.
Oh no.
So now it's not just about hiding. It's a targeted threat.
It is.
So what do you think about that moment?
That realization is everything, right?
Yeah.
It's the turning point, and the narrator bolts.
Just takes off running.
Yeah.
Despite the danger.
And that probably saved their life.
Right. And then you hear the gunshot.
Oh, great.
The sound of a bullet ricocheting.
So scary.
He's just like, so real, right? And thankfully, the narrator gets out.
Right.
But the aftermath is still unsettling.
Yeah.
They catch the shooter, Mr. Buckley survives, thankfully.
Thank goodness.
But the motive, according to the narrator,
yeah,
is just some beef.
Wow.
But the impact on the narrator is undeniable.
Right.
They say, that gunshot still haunts me.
Oh, yeah.
And it just shows that these events...
It can leave such lasting scars, even when you survive physically.
So for you, the listener,
yeah,
this story really shows that danger can erupt, even in familiar places that seem safe.
Absolutely.
And how fast things can escalate, and how crucial those split-second decisions are.
Right.
You know, it's like fight or flight.
Yeah, and that motive beef.
Yeah.
It raises another question.
What's that?
How do personal conflicts, even small ones, become so violent that they break into these public spaces?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's troubling.
Yeah, so as you can hear, these three accounts are so powerful.
They are.
And unsettling.
Yeah.
Schools should be safe places.
Right.
For learning and growing.
Yeah. Where our kids and we ourselves can feel secure.
Right. But these stories force us to confront reality. That security can be shattered so easily.
Yeah.
And ordinary school days can become life-threatening.
Absolutely. And the fact that the original podcast host got so many stories like these suggests that these intense lockdown experiences might be more common than we realize.
It's kind of like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. There's this whole landscape of fear and vulnerability that we don't always talk about.
That's true.
Yeah.
So as you process these stories, we want you to think about this. How do these firsthand accounts, these raw experiences, change how you view school safety and emergency preparedness?
Right.
What are the bigger societal factors that lead to these terrifying events in our schools?
It's complex.
It is.
There's no easy answers.
Nope.
But it's something we have to keep thinking about.
Absolutely.
You know, and discussing.
Yeah, for sure.
And figuring out
how to make things better
exactly
for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
until next time, stay safe.
Take care.
Be well.
Bye.